Morning in Cedar Hollow was wrapped in a thin veil of mist, turning the pine forest into a dreamlike painting from a distant memory. In a wooden cabin halfway up the mountain, Tom Ward sat in silence, his hand gently brushing over a faded photograph, eyes glimmering with a pain that had never truly healed. At his feet lay Blaze, a German shepherd with a warm, golden-amber coat, still and steady, yet his gaze sharp as if waiting for something to come. Then one morning, a thick, unmarked envelope arrived, carrying a message that would lead them to the mysterious Blackridge Mountains. There, among cold cliffs and deep shadows, something awaited them, a forgotten truth or a secret powerful enough to change everything. A light mist draped itself over the pine forests surrounding Cedar Hollow, turning everything into a pure silver-white painting. Distant peaks peeked through the thin fog as the unsteady light of dawn filtered through the branches, casting pale golden streaks across the damp earth. The winter air slipped into every corner of the small wooden cabin at the end of a dirt road. Wind whispered through gaps in the doors, and the cracks in the roof, its sound like the slow sigh of time itself. Tom Ward sat in the living room, deep blue eyes fixed on the fog-covered window. His modest home, its wooden walls warm yet weathered by years, still offered a rare sense of safety in a world that felt endlessly unsettled. Years in the Navy had carved strong lines into his frame, broad shoulders, steady arms, but his face bore the marks of a deeper weariness, and of losses that could never be put into words. His brown hair, dusted with silver at the temples, was cropped short in the way soldiers keep things. Tidy, controlled, always ready. Clara, his wife, had once been the light of his life. Now she was only a memory. Illness had taken her away, leaving in Tom's heart a hollow space and a slow, constant ache. Each morning, the first rays of daylight touched her photograph on the table, stirring old scenes. Her warm smile in the mornings, their walks through fog-draped pines, the quiet promises to never let go. Now the only constant at Tom's side was Blaze, his golden-amber German shepherd, loyal beyond measure. Blaze lay at Tom's feet, his dark brown eyes bright and watchful, following every movement. The dog's rich amber coat caught the faint glow from the oil lamp, a gentle halo framing his sturdy bilsil. Blaze was more than a dog. He was the last true companion Tom had left, one who could read his thoughts without words, a living reminder that, even in loss, loyalty and unconditional love endure. The air inside the cabin carried the scent of aged wood and the faint smoke from the fireplace. The wind outside hummed softly in the seams of the house, joining the slow rhythm of Blaze's breathing, in a quiet song of comfort. Tom reached down, his hand resting on the dog's head, feeling the warmth through the soft fur. His voice, low and rough from long silences, broke the stillness. "We'll find a way through this, my friend. We'll find the road ahead." Blaze tilted his head, ears pricked, eyes full of understanding, as if to say, "I'm here always." Cedar Hollow, tucked between mountains and old forest, grew even quieter in winter. Dirt roads slick with frost, windows clouded with condensation, and thin columns of smoke curling from rooftops gave the place a solitude, both lonely and serene. Tom had once loved this town, loved the warmth of a place where everyone knew each other's names. But after Clara's passing and the debts that followed, Cedar Hollow had become a world apart, where light seemed to hide behind the fog. On the table in front of him lay stacks of papers, bills, bank notices, insurance forms. Each one a reminder of the chaos Clara's illness had left behind, of medical costs that never stopped, and of the choices he would soon have to make, just to keep going. But when his gaze fell on Blaze, the weight seemed to ease for a moment. The dog was like a bridge between the aching past and the difficult present, a reason, perhaps the only one, to keep moving. Tom rose and stepped out onto the front porch, breathing in the cold morning air. Mist wrapped around him like a thin blanket, the wind stinging his cheeks with the smell of earth and deep woods. Blaze padded beside him, sure-footed, his eyes scanning the horizon. Around them, the world felt like a vast blank canvas, waiting for a new story to take shape. A journey not only of survival, but of courage, loyalty, and hope in the harsh days of winter. In that quiet moment, Tom felt life's pulse again. The distant song of birds, the soft fall of leaves, the steady whisper of a creek in the forest. Blaze lifted his head, scenting the air, ears twitching in alertness. Tom smiled faintly, feeling a shift inside him, like a small breeze stirring the heart. A new day was opening, and with Blaze beside him, he was ready to meet whatever lay ahead, however rough it might be. The sky over Cedar Hollow grew lighter as the fog began to lift, revealing the jagged silhouettes of the peaks. Tom turned back to the cabin to Blaze, his steadfast companion, and thought, "We'll go on and find something greater than loss." Blaze gave a low, steady rumble, as if to seal the promise, and together they stepped into the winter day with steady hearts, ready for the secrets and trials to come. Tom was pouring coffee in the small kitchen when the doorbell rang. Blaze's head shot up, ears pointed, and he moved to the window as if sensing something unusual. Wiping his hands on the thick wool of his sweater, Tom walked to the door. On the porch stood the mailman, smiling warmly, holding a thick envelope stamped in red from a law office. "Morning, Mr. Ward. Registered mail for you," the man said, his voice clear in the cold air. Blaze tilted his head, eyes bright, as if trying to guess what waited inside. Tom took the envelope, feeling its weight and unspoken heaviness pressing through the paper. He nodded his thanks, closing the door with Blaze close at his heel, the dog's gleaming coat catching the soft light through the small window. At the worn wooden table beside the kitchen, Tom opened the envelope. The words inside were formal, the kind printed in a legal hand from the state of West Virginia notification that his grandfather, Oliver Ward, had passed away 3 weeks ago, leaving his only inheritance to Tom. As his eyes traced each line, he felt a faint tug in his chest. Not shock, not panic, just the quiet stir of something distant. The man he knew only from his mother's stories was gone, leaving behind a legacy the rest of Cedar Hollow had always called worthless. The inheritance was a remote piece of land deep within the Blackridge Mountains, home to a vast rock cavern, its jagged mouth looming above the earth, and a weathered wooden cabin standing nearby. In the letter, the lawyer described it as an untouched, rugged tract few had ever cared about. Steep, rocky terrain, difficult to access with no clear commercial value, the note read. Tom exhaled slowly, closing his eyes, picturing a cold, mist-wrapped mountainside he had never once set foot on. Blaze inhaled deeply, his nose brushing against Tom's foot, as if sensing the weight of hesitation and tension running through his owner. Tom bent down to stroke him, pressing his hands lightly into the dog's coat, feeling warmth spread through the winter chill. "We'll see for ourselves, partner," he said, his voice low, but edged with resolve. Blaze's tail gave a small, certain wag, his gaze full of trust and readiness for whatever might come. Tom rose, pulling on his thickest coat and wrapping a wool scarf tightly around his neck. His breath hung in the air in small clouds. One hand on the door handle, he looked out over the fog-veiled yard and the surrounding pine forest. The winter landscape folding around the Blackridge Range stirred a mix of anticipation and mystery within him. An empty cave or something else entirely, he wondered, eyes lingering on the pine branches trembling in the wind. The old pickup rumbled to life on the frost-slick dirt road, its tires crunching over a thin layer of ice. Blaze lay quietly on the back seat, eyes bright, glancing now and then out the window. Tom followed the winding trail into the deep woods, his mind a restless mix of questions and quiet excitement. Somewhere ahead waited the riddle his grandfather had left behind, and it felt as though the mountains themselves were watching his approach. As the truck pushed deeper into the forest, the fog thickened, dawn's light breaking in weak shards through the canopy, dancing faintly on moss-covered boulders. The scenery seemed to pull Tom into another world, still solemn yet brimming with unspoken meaning. Blaze drew in the cold air, ears, sharp, every movement deliberate like a guardian on duty. His presence gave Tom an anchor in the lonely winter hush. After nearly 2 hours on the dirt road, the land came into view. The cavern yawned wide, a dark curtain swallowing the light. The cabin beside it sagged under a rust-stained tin roof, its old wooden walls still standing firm. Tom cut the engine and stepped out, letting Blaze bound ahead. The dog immediately circled the clearing, sniffing at the air, eyes alight with focus. Tom stood before the cavern's entrance, one hand resting on Blaze's neck. "We're going to find something here, aren't we?" he murmured. Blaze glanced up, gaze unwavering, loyalty radiating like a silent vow. A pulse of anticipation beat through Tom's chest, quickening his breath. He moved toward the cabin, pushing open the creaking door. The sound echoed into the cold stillness, as though announcing his arrival to a place frozen in another time, one that still carried his grandfather's mark. Inside the cabin remained almost untouched, a wide wooden table strewn with papers and maps. A plain single bed in the corner, bookshelves leaning under the weight of dust. The air was thick with the scent of old timber, moss, and stone. Blaze paced slowly, nose-working, ears pricked toward every faint sound. Tom followed closely, resting a hand on the dog's shoulder, feeling the tension and alertness beneath the fur. He scanned the room, his mind caught between curiosity and anticipation. Could this worthless land hide something his grandfather had meant him to discover? In his thoughts, Oliver Ward appeared. Sharp eyes, a kind smile laced with secrets, sending a shiver down Tom's spine even as it steeled his resolve. Blaze stopped sniffing deeply, then looked back at Tom with a silent message. "We're ready, and we will uncover everything he left for us." Tom nodded with a faint smile. The winter air, the mist, the Blackridge forest, and Blaze, his steadfast companion, wove together into a single grounding moment. A fresh current of energy stirred in his chest, a pull to step into whatever lay ahead. To others, this cave might mean nothing. But to Tom and Blaze, it was challenge, heritage, and the chance to reconnect with both the past and themselves. Stepping back outside, Tom caught the winter light glinting off Blaze's amber coat, making it glow against the mist. "We'll uncover it all, my friend," he promised silently. "Every step will take us closer to the answer he wanted us to find." Blaze gave a soft rumbled tail, swaying once, as if to seal the pact, ready to enter a journey whose ending neither of them could yet imagine. The fog began to thin, morning light filtering through the mountain pass, setting the moss-covered stones aglow. The cavern's entrance loomed ahead like a doorway into an entirely different world. Tom moved toward it, Blaze padding ahead, nose testing the cold air, ears vigilant. The quiet was absolute. Only the wind through the treetops, their footsteps on damp earth, and the steady rhythm of Blaze's breathing. The dirt track leading here twisted like a slow serpent through ridges of pine and jagged stone. Winter mist clung to the canopy droplets, falling onto the sodden ground. Tom's pickup slid slightly over the thin frost tires, grinding through layers of wet leaves and loose gravel, the sound matching the thud of his own eager heartbeat. Blaze had been a silent sentinel in the back seat. Eyes, bright ears, rigid nose taking in scents Tom could never perceive. Tom drew in a deep breath. The resin of pine mingling with the dampness of earth sharpened his senses. Every mile closer to the property seemed to quicken his pulse. He knew the townsfolk saw this inheritance as worthless, but his instincts told him it was anything but. Blaze hopped out first, nose to the ground, a faint shiver running through him, before he looked up at Tom as if to say, "We're right where we're meant to be." The road ended at the foot of the Blackridge Range, where great moss-covered boulders jutted from the earth, blanketed in a thick layer of fallen leaves. Before Tom stood the weathered wooden cabin, crouched beside the yawning mouth of the cave. Time had left its mark. Rusted tin roofing, jagged along the edges, sun-bleached walls, windows dimmed beneath a heavy veil of dust. Wind slipped through the cracks, making the boards creak with a ghostly echo that carried through the stillness of the mountains. Blaze padded to the door, nose tasting the air, ears, high eyes burning like small lanterns in the fog. Tom opened the truck door and stepped down onto the damp earth, the cold biting into his fingers. Yet inside him, a restless anticipation rose. Each step toward the cabin stirred dust into the air, mingling with the scents of aged timber and stone filling the space. With a wild, secretive breath, Blaze took the lead, pausing now and then to sniff, then turning to glance back as if to say, "We're walking toward something big." Inside the cabin was small and narrow, yet still carried the marks of a place Oliver Ward had once lived and worked. A broad wooden table dominated the room, covered with papers, maps, and time-worn tools. Against one wall sat a plain bed with a dust-covered blanket and several leaning shelves, sagged under the weight of old books, their spines lit dimly by the light filtering through the dusty window. Every detail bore traces of Oliver's precision and care, though now muted by the weight of years. Blaze moved slowly past the table nose, twitching ears locked on every faint sound. He stopped before the old fireplace, its bricks rough and faded thick with dust. Drawing in a deep breath, his tail gave a small, quick wag before he began working a claw with surprising delicacy at one loose brick. Tom's eyebrows lifted. Every movement radiated the sharpness and intuition that set Blaze apart from ordinary dogs. Stepping closer, Tom rested a hand on Blaze's shoulder, following his line of focus. As the brick shifted free, a narrow gap appeared, revealing a hidden compartment. In the stillness, a beam of light from the window glinted on an old tin box tucked inside. Blaze lifted his head, eyes gleaming, sending the silent message, "This is the moment we've been waiting for." Tom knelt, lifting the box carefully. The metal was dulled with age, its silver turned to a warm patina. Yet it felt solid in his hands. Opening the lid, he found an antique compass. 19th century, its needle still swinging steadily, as if it still felt the pull of the earth. Folded beside it lay a slip of paper. The words scrawled yet clear, Key Ridge cipher, page 1. Tom's hands trembled, his heartbeat quickening. This wasn't just a keepsake. It was a key to a secret his grandfather had left behind. Blaze stood close, head tilted, eyes bright with understanding. The cabin seemed to hum with anticipation, the soft daylight perfectly framing the tin box and its coded page. Tom stroked Blaze's head, his voice low but steady. "We'll find out what he wanted us to know, my friend." Blaze's tail swayed, once his gaze unwavering. Ready to walk through whatever lay ahead, Tom spread the page on the table. Numbers, symbols, and jagged lines of handwriting wove together in a puzzle both chaotic and enticing. He knew this was only the first step in a journey Oliver had set in motion. A path where each clue led to something long hidden. Blaze settled beside him, nose shifting faintly. Eyes fixed on Tom's every move, a silent reminder that he was never alone in this. Winter light seeped through the dusty window, painting pale gold across the table and the tin box. The quiet remained, yet inside Tom's chest, something urgent had begun to stir. Every worn object, every breath of timber and dust now seemed alive with meaning. This place was no longer an abandoned shelter. It was the beginning of a family mystery, one Oliver had carried to his grave. Blaze nosed the tin box again before turning to Tom, his eyes a spark of energy. "We've found our first clue. Now it's time to follow it." Tom smiled faintly, warmth rising through the winter air. The road ahead would be hard, but with Blaze beside him, he felt ready for anything. He slipped the compass and cipher page into his pocket, running a hand through Blaze's coat before glancing toward the mist-veiled cave outside. The path into the mountains seemed to beckon them forward into a journey thick with both danger and promise. From the window, the soft winter light fell across the table where the tin box now sat. Beside it lay a thick leather-bound journal, the cover worn smooth by years of use. Tom eased it open, the scent of old paper and fading ink drawing him deeper into his grandfather's presence. Blaze lay at his side, head lifting and lowering in time, with each turn of the page, his eyes alert yet curious. The handwriting was compact, but sure, each stroke strong. It told of Oliver's lifelong search for the truth behind the legend of Colonel Joel Keeridge. A Civil War figure whispered to have hidden a fortune in gold, along with military intelligence of great value. Between the lines of narrative were rough, hand-drawn maps, strange symbols Tom had never seen, and notes detailing hydraulic traps. The overlapping lines, arrows, and coded letters demanded concentration, but instinct told him each mark carried weight. Blaze tilted his head, nose twitching at the air as if to say, "This is only the beginning of something far bigger than us." The journal told of a time in 1864 when Joel Keeridge designed an intricate network of hydraulic traps harnessing mountain water and gravity to guard both a treasure and strategic documents. Each set of notes was so meticulously detailed that Tom could almost see the valves, the hidden cisterns, and the submerged snares that could threaten any intruder careless enough to step into them. Blaze rose, circling the table nose, brushing across each page as if verifying every clue Tom was absorbing. Turning to another page, Tom found Oliver's own words explaining why he had devoted himself to chasing this legend. It was never solely for gold or wealth, but for the preservation of history, justice, and the values Joel Keeridge had left behind. Every sentence carried conviction, and Tom felt a deepening bond with his grandfather, stronger than ever before. Blaze, as if understanding, laid his head on the table beside Tom's hand, his eyes filled with empathy and a readiness to protect him if the need arose. The rough maps in the journal were more than sketches of the cavern. They pinpointed peculiar features, hidden water channels, camouflaged trap pits, and subtle signs only someone fluent in the cipher could recognize. Tom realized each detail might be a crucial key to their journey. Blaze hopped onto a chair, nose nudging one corner of the map, almost as if marking the first place they should investigate. Tom chuckled, running a hand over Blaze's head. "You're sharp. Those eyes of yours will guide us forward." Oliver's writing also carried warnings about others who might be hunting for the treasure. Reading the lines describing cunning, ruthless individuals willing to do anything to claim the gold and its secrets sent a cold ripple along Tom's spine. Blaze lifted his head, ears rigid, eyes locked on Tom, with a message as clear as speech. "We must be careful." His steady presence bolstered Tom's confidence, as if the dog's instincts were an extension of his own. Throughout the journal, Oliver had marked important passages with unique symbols, combinations of numbers and letters that reminded Tom of military ciphers he had once encountered. Blaze stood at the table, staring intently at a page before lowering himself and brushing a paw over one particular symbol, as though emphasizing its meaning. Tom smiled, recognizing that the dog had likely aided Oliver more than once in pinpointing critical locations. Beyond the technical notes, the journal painted short portraits of Joel Keeridge, how he safeguarded information, arranged the trap mechanisms, and manipulated water flow within the cavern. The descriptions conjured in Tom's mind the image of a living tactical map. The realization that this was not just treasure, but a brilliant defensive system sent a shiver through him. Blaze padded around the table, his nose trailing the map's edges, as if affirming that every mark was important and true. On the final page, Oliver had laid out a plan in case he could not complete his mission. Step-by-step instructions on how to decode the Keeridge cipher. The care and precision in every line were unmistakable. Blaze rested his head on Tom's arm, eyes radiating trust, as if to say, "We can do this, my friend." A new determination stirred within Tom, strengthened by the silent energy Blaze seemed to pass to him. The cabin was silent, but for the whistle of wind through the window cracks and the soft whisper of turning pages. Tom stayed there for hours, reading, feeling Oliver's hand guiding him, pointing the way forward. Blaze moved through the cabin, inhaling the scents of old wood and earth, his bright eyes reminding Tom that each step ahead must be deliberate and precise. Closing the journal, Tom set it beside the compass and the cipher page. He looked at Blaze, his voice low but resolute. "We know our first direction, Blaze. Grandfather's secret will lead us. But every step will demand skill and resolve." Blaze's tail swayed, his eyes glowing with readiness for whatever waited ahead. The light through the window dimmed dust, catching on the air above the table maps and open pages. The old cabin now felt alive, each object and mark holding a pulse of purpose. Tom knew this journey was more than a search for treasure. It was a bridge between past, present, and future, with Blaze at its center, guiding, guarding, and inspiring each step. Blaze glanced at him one last time before retreating to the corner, pressing his nose to the journal as if to remind him every clue matters and we'll need them all. Tom nodded, a fresh surge of energy in his chest. The next step would take them to the cavern itself, where Joel Keeridge's true legacy lay waiting. As the day's last light slid across the dusty glass, Tom and Blaze rose ready to leave the cabin. The map's journal compass and cipher page were gathered, unlocking the path into the Blackridge cave and the secrets Oliver Ward had guarded so fiercely. Morning in Blackridge carried an uncanny stillness. Mist still clung to the pine boughs, the distant peaks blurred in a pale gold dawn. Tom shrugged into his thick coat hands, gripping the flashlight, ready to step into the cavern for the first time. Blaze stood at his side, ears erect, nose testing the air, eyes bright with the same resolve mirrored in his master's gaze. The cave's mouth loomed wide before them, its moss-flecked rocks forming shifting patterns of light and shadow under the early sun. Tom stepped forward slowly, each footfall crunching on loose stone. Blaze moved ahead, nose brushing the air, ears tilting to catch every sound from within. The air inside was dense with the scent of stone and water, dampness that sank into skin and hair, carrying the chill of the mountain's heart. The tunnel narrowed into a high-ceilinged passage, stalactites hanging like frozen drips of time glinting under the beam of Tom's flashlight. He let Blaze lead, trusting the dog to chart each step. Every breath echoed softly in the stone, heightening the anticipation and awakening the soldier's instincts, still alive within him. He caught every sound, the delicate tap of dripping water, the faint crumble of gravel, and now and then the whisper of wind threading through unseen fissures. Only minutes after stepping into the cave, Blaze froze, muscles taut, nose working the air, ears standing high. He turned to Tom with a sharp, focused look that warned of something unusual. Tom crouched and scanned the ground, spotting unfamiliar boot prints pressed into the soft earth of the passage. They were not his or Blaze's. The size and tread told him someone else had been here recently. A faint tightening gripped his chest, the prickling sense of being watched pressing in closer. He moved forward with deliberate care, the flashlight beam sweeping across patches of dirt, dripping stalactites and hairline cracks in the cave walls. Blaze stayed close, sniffing, leaping lightly over small rocks, eyes tracking every detail. Rounding a bend, Tom's light fell on an old spent shell casing beside a trickle of water. He stooped to pick it up, the cold metal sending a chill from his hand to his heart. This was no harmless exploration. Someone else was hunting for something, and they had been here before them. Blaze forged ahead, nose low, ears, rigid eyes glinting with vigilance. He halted near a narrow fissure, letting out a low growl that seemed to say, "Be careful. Something's close." Tom laid a hand on his head, feeling the coiled strength and sharp instinct in the dog, as though Blaze were his second set of eyes and ears in the dark. "You're right, Blaze," Tom thought. "We have to tread carefully." The tunnel widened into a larger chamber, the damp floor still bearing those alien footprints leading deeper in. Tom noted every indentation, every fragment of broken rock, every subtle shift in the earth, traces of someone's passage. Blaze stayed ahead, springing over boulders, nose twitching, ears on full alert, silently warning of hidden dangers. The sensation of being shadowed grew stronger, with each step their breaths echoing into the emptiness, quickening Tom's pulse. On an uneven stretch of wall, Tom spotted crude symbols carved into the stone, perhaps marks left by Joel Keyridge or by others who had come before. Blaze stopped again, directing his nose toward a small run of water. Tom stepped closer, shining his light, and found a slight bulge in the ground. A hydraulic trap mechanism, long dormant, yet still a vivid reminder of the sophistication his grandfather had studied. Blaze stood beside it, eyes bright as if declaring, "We've found an important trace. Let's keep moving." They entered a narrower corridor, the space compressing around them, ceiling, dipping low with stalactites, nearly brushing their heads. The musty scent deepened the ground underfoot, slick and soft. Blaze's steps were steady and sure, his gaze never wavering, while Tom followed close behind, flashlight in hand, scanning each surface. The strange prints and the shell casing told him without doubt. They were not the only ones seeking this secret. Blaze stopped once more, drawing in a long breath, ears forward, then turned to meet Tom's gaze. His eyes held a fierce resolve, silently saying, "Go on. But know we're being watched." Tom nodded, a mixture of anticipation and caution surging through him. Every step in this cave could bring a vital discovery, yet each one also carried an unseen risk. Deeper still, they found more prints, smaller this time, skirting around narrow crevices likely belonging to other treasure hunters. Blaze trailed them, ears fixed, bounding over rocks, nose locked on the path. Tom kept close, his grip on the flashlight firm, its beam skating over etched markings in the stone and dark pools of water. The sense of pursuit was now a steady presence, but Blaze's nearness steadied him. The dog would lead and warn him if danger came. After several hundred meters, they stopped beside a massive boulder where the tracks and shell casings ended. Tom knelt, sifting bits of gravel between his fingers, studying the scene. Blaze stood still at his side, eyes locked on the darkness ahead. The cave seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for their next move. Drawing a deep breath, Tom brushed a hand over Blaze's head. His voice was low but certain. "We keep going, Blaze. Every trace, every clue. It matters." Blaze's tail gave a single sweep before he leapt onto a rock, looking back with a spark of courage in his eyes. Together, they stepped into the deeper dark, where Joel Keyridge's secrets and Oliver Ward's legacy lay waiting, one careful step at a time. The air still carried the weight of being followed, the prints and shell casing, undeniable proof they were not alone. Blaze paused, sniffing lightly, a quiet reminder that the real test had only begun. Tom stared into the black ahead, determined to push forward. The exploration of Blackridge Cave was far from over and full of the unexpected. As they pressed deeper, the cold seeped into Tom's fingers and breath laced with the mineral damp of limestone and earth. Blaze led, nose low, ears, alert eyes catching the flashlight's glint. Each paw fall was deliberate, testing scent and sound, scanning every shift in the air. Tom followed, heart thudding, the anticipation curling through every muscle. Then Blaze halted by a jagged wall, its surface slick with moss. A low growl rumbled from his chest, nose aimed toward a small fissure at the base. This wasn't just any crack. It breathed a draft far colder than the surrounding air. Blaze's breathing sharpened, his body tightening. Tom bent, angling the light close, and saw a section of stone that shifted faintly at his touch, as if something lay behind it. Blaze inhaled deeply, nose pressed to the gap, then turned to Tom with a look of fierce intent. His message was clear. "Something here matters. We need to pay attention." A faint thrill ran through Tom as he realized his grandfather had likely left a critical sign here. Kneeling, he ran his hands over the loose rock. Blaze stood guard, ears forward, eyes bright, scanning for the smallest movement or sound. Tom set his weight against the stone, pushing gently. It shuddered, releasing a groaning creak like the breath of time itself. Blaze's muscles rippled, nose-twitching tail quivering, ready for whatever came. With a sharp click, the rock shifted further, opening a narrow gap. Tom braced his shoulder, heaving harder, and slowly the slab swung aside, revealing a hidden stone doorway expertly concealed behind the wall. Tom's heart pounded, a mix of anticipation and exhilaration taking hold. The stone door had revealed a narrow passage burrowing deeper into the mountain where the beam of his flashlight could barely reach a few steps ahead. Blaze moved in first, drawing in the air with careful sniffs, ears on constant alert. Every step was deliberate, his attention sweeping over every object and crevice, as if to guarantee their safety. Tom followed, close eyes fixed on Blaze, feeling the steady current of strength and sharp instinct radiating from him. Inside, the space was tight yet full of secrets. The smooth rock walls bore the touch of human hands, delicate carvings, faint markings, and traces of faded pigment. Tom realized this was an area Joel Keeridge had studied with precision, perhaps even a place his grandfather had visited repeatedly to track his progress. Blaze paused, sniffed, and his eyes flared as though to underline that they were on the right path. A few steps further, Tom brushed his hand over another wall, this one dusted lightly with grit. He pulled aside a thin stone panel cleverly concealed against the rock, revealing a small niche. Inside lay an original military map by Joel Keeridge, dated 1864, folded with care, the paper yellowed, but intact. Tom lifted it gently, feeling the fragile strength of the sheet as if he were holding a direct connection to Joel's mind and will. Blaze stayed close, sniffing at every contour of the map, ears pricked high. The dog seemed to grasp the weight of this discovery. Tom unfolded it. Lines, symbols, and notes spread before him. The drawing outlined the cave system, hidden chambers, water reservoirs, hydraulic channels, and the locations of intricate traps. The sheer intelligence in the design was clear in every stroke, a testament to Keeridge's meticulous effort to shield his treasure and strategic documents. The cave grew stiller around them. Only the occasional drip from the ceiling punctuated the quiet mingling with Blaze's steady breathing and the hard pulse in Tom's chest. The sense of stone damp and the old paper combined into something distinctive, reminding him they were stepping into a journey that crossed centuries. Blaze stood poised, head slightly tilted, watching every motion Tom made as if to emphasize that caution mattered most in this moment. Tom spread the map out on the rock floor flashlight, illuminating the complex symbols. Many details mirrored those in Oliver's journal. Blaze inhaled deeply, nose touching the map's edge before glancing up, eyes bright with alertness. Tom knew Blaze was marking details that his own eyes might miss. Settling beside him, Tom compared each section of the map with the journal's notes, feeling the strands of past and present entwine. The ingenuity of Joel Keeridge meeting the determination of Oliver Ward. Every line, every marking served a purpose. Blaze's steady presence at his side reinforced the importance of even the smallest clue. Tom breathed deep, his excitement and resolve building for the next steps into the Blackridge cave. As Tom worked, Blaze suddenly froze, ears forward, nose angled toward a dark seam in the rock wall. A low growl vibrated from his chest. Tom approached, beam slicing through the narrow slit, revealing a shallow channel disappearing deeper into the cave, almost as if waiting for them to follow. Blaze quivered tail, stirring the message in his eyes, clear. "We're on the right track, but stay sharp." Tom's hand found Blaze's fur, warmth flowing into him against the cave's cold. Folding the map with care and tucking it into his jacket, he met Blaze's gaze. "We've got our first real lead. The next step takes us further in, where the real secret waits." Blaze's tail swept once before he sprang lightly onto a boulder, eyes alight with unwavering loyalty. The flashlight's glow danced across the stone walls, shadows shifting with their every move. The cave seemed alive now, every rock fissure and etched surface a fragment of Keyridge's mind, a puzzle of skill and secrecy. Blaze stood alert, nose working, ears taut, affirming that every step mattered and their caution would shape their success. As the pale trace of dawn faded deeper into the cave, Tom and Blaze faced the path ahead, the original military map in hand, ready to uncover what had been hidden for more than a century. Blaze's soft growl rumbled again, reminding Tom that the real test was just beginning. Drawing in a steady breath, Tom clasped Blaze's side, and together they stepped forward into the darkness toward the greatest secrets of all. Stepping out of the cave, the morning air wrapped them in a crisp, pine-scented chill. The fragrance of forest and earth mingled with Blaze's breath as he trotted close at Tom's side, eyes bright and alert, nose tasting every shift in the wind, as though he could sense signs invisible to Tom. The Blackridge Range rose in the distance under a pale light, a backdrop both imposing and alive, a reminder that their journey had only just begun. Tom steered the truck along the winding dirt road back toward town, aiming for the small home of Eleanor Hayes, an elderly historian and one of Oliver Ward's oldest friends. She was the only person he could think of who might decipher the clues and provide the historical frame for the map and journal Blaze had helped him recover. Pulling up outside a vine-covered wooden house, Tom stopped the engine. Blaze leapt down, trotting a few steps before pausing to sniff the areas forward, eyes fixed on Tom as if to say, "We'll find the answers here." The home was both quaint and dignified, its wooden frame weathered yet strong. A small brass plaque by the door read, "Eleanor Hayes, historian and historical consultant." Tom knocked the sound, carrying along a leaf-dappled walkway, mingling with the distant call of birds. Blaze sat at his side, tail stirring lightly, eyes shining as though anticipating what came next. The door opened to reveal Eleanor Hayes. In her 70s, her white hair fell in soft disarray around her shoulders, and her keen eyes seemed to read every detail at a glance. When she saw Tom, her smile came gentle, yet knowing, threaded with warmth. Blaze's tail wagged as he inhaled her scent, and Eleanor bent to stroke his head, her eyes reflecting friendliness and understanding. "Tom Ward, how good to see you. And Blaze, you're looking well." Eleanor's voice was warm, filled with genuine care. Tom smiled faintly and nodded. "I'm doing fine, and Blaze is the same as ever. Loyal and watchful." Blaze lifted his head, eyes gleaming as though to confirm his master's words. Tom stepped into the house, setting his backpack and the map down on the wooden table. He told Eleanor about what he had found inside the cave, the original military map of Joel Keyridge, Oliver's notes, and the strange markings carved into the stone. Blaze moved around the room, sniffing softly at each sheet of paper, his eyes constantly tracking Tom's movements as if to make sure everything was safe. Eleanor listened intently, her brow furrowing when she heard the name Joel Keyridge and the mention of a 19th century military map. She touched her chin thoughtfully before speaking. "Ah, Joel Keyridge. He was known for the defensive systems and treasures he hid after the Civil War, but very few know the details about him. Are you certain what you found is genuine?" Tom nodded, unfolding the map and the notes for her to examine. Eleanor bent over, tracing her finger along the symbols, her eyes lighting up as she recognized the precision and complexity of the traps Keyridge had designed. Blaze stood by the table, ears high, eyes fixed, giving a quiet sniff as though to remind Tom that every small detail mattered. When Tom described the strange signs inside the cave, the footprints and the spent shell casing they'd discovered, Eleanor's frown deepened. She explained that Oliver had visited her a few months before his death, looking troubled and secretive. He told me strangers had come asking about his research. They weren't locals, well-dressed, expensive cars. Their eyes were cold, as if to say none of the secrets belong to us. She said, her voice low, a glint of caution in her gaze. A chill crept down Tom's spine. Blaze tilted his head, sniffing the areas, sharp alert to every shift in the room. Tom stroked him slowly, the contact steadying him. Blaze had often helped Oliver spot what others would miss. He took a deep breath, tension coiled in his mind, but his resolve hardening. Eleanor offered something more. The man leading them is named Maxwell Kane. He runs Dominion Holdings, a company that exploits and takes control of historically valuable sites. Hearing his name, you should be careful. He doesn't work by honest means. Tom etched the name Maxwell Kane into memory, feeling the presence of a danger that had yet to reveal itself. Blaze circled the table, eyes keen, nose working, as though warning that the threat was already closing in. Tom gave him a faint smile, comforted by the dog's loyalty and instinct. Eleanor went on to speak of Oliver's death. I never believed it was an accident. On the day of the crash, I saw signs of something wrong. There were people following him, and I believe they wanted to take the notes and maps Oliver had hidden. Blaze's tail gave a small wag, his eyes flaring with understanding. Tom tightened his grip on the dog, drawing strength from the connection, determination flowing through him. The conversation stretched through the morning as Eleanor examined each detail in the journal and the map, offering historical context and key insights into the treasure. Tom took careful notes. Blaze sitting close, eyes following Tom's pen as if to make sure they missed nothing. Before leaving, Tom met Blaze's gaze, his voice steady. We know where to go next, Blaze. The secret's waiting in Blackridge, and we're going to find it. Blaze's tail swept once, and he bounded up beside Tom, eyes alight with courage. As they stepped out, morning light filtered through the trees, setting the forest leaves aglow. Life was all around them. The bird song, the wind slipping through branches, Blaze's breath keeping pace with Tom's heartbeat. Every step on the damp dirt road was a reminder that the journey ahead was as dangerous and mysterious as it was full of promise. On the winding road back to the old cabin, Blaze sat steady in the back seat, eyes bright. Every name, every symbol, every clue Eleanor had given echoed in Tom's mind. They now knew their adversary, Maxwell Kane, and understood that Oliver's legacy was more than maps and history. It was a true test. The exploration of Blackridge hadn't officially begun, but Tom could feel that every decision ahead would shape both their success and their safety. Morning light streamed through the cabin's dusty window, falling across the wooden table where Tom had spread Oliver's map and journal. Blaze stood beside it, ears high, eyes keen, alert to every sound. The stillness was so deep that Tom could hear the wind through the cracks, the faint creak of old timbers, and Blaze's even breathing. A noise at the door made both of them turn at once. The door swung open, wind sweeping in and sending dry leaves skittering across the floor. A tall man stepped into the frame, moving with a calm but commanding presence. Tom instantly recognized the cold eyes and assured bearing. This had to be Maxwell Kane, the head of Dominion Holdings Eleanor had warned him about. Blaze went rigid, muscles tense, eyes bright, nose testing the air. He stepped forward ahead of Tom, every movement calculated and watchful. Kane spoke in a low, cutting voice. Mr. Ward, I know about your land and your cave. We're prepared to pay you a substantial sum to transfer it to us. This could solve all your debts and personal troubles. Tom stood straight, his gaze cold but resolute. He knew this offer was more than a simple transaction. Something in Kane's eyes, the way he surveyed the cabin and glanced at Blaze, set every instinct on edge. Blaze positioned himself between them, his stance solid fur, slightly bristling, a low growl rumbling like a warning. Danger is here. Tom rested his hand on Blaze's shoulder, feeling the strength and awareness flowing from the dog. His voice was low, firm. I'm not interested in the money. This land is not for sale, and what you're looking for will never be in your hands. Blaze's tail twitched once, but his gaze stayed locked on Kane, a silent pledge of absolute support. Kane smiled faintly, but without warmth. You can refuse, but understand. Opportunities like this don't come twice. And what you're guarding in that cave is worth far more than any debt or personal burden. He moved slowly around the cabin, his eyes skimming over the maps and journal pages. Blaze's growl deepened a warning in the glint of his eyes. The dog stood before Tom like an invisible wall guarding him from any sudden move. Tom kept his eyes locked on Kane, his voice firm and unwavering. I'm not giving it up. This is my family's legacy, and I will protect it. Everything here matters, not just in value, but in history and in what my grandfather left behind. Blaze touched Tom's hand lightly with his nose, as if to reinforce that they would guard this legacy together. Kane stopped staring deeply into Tom's eyes. You might believe your decision is right, but be careful. Not everyone walks away quietly. Some people will go further than you think to take what they want. His tone dropped lower, laced with an unspoken threat that needed no explanation. Blaze stepped forward, sniffing the air, ears rigid, tail moving with cautious tension. Tom laid a hand across Blaze's back, feeling the dog's steady strength and support flow into him like a shot of courage. From his coat, Kane drew a thick envelope and placed it on the table. This is my final offer. Think carefully before refusing. Opportunities like this don't come twice. He turned toward the door, but his gaze swept over Tom and Blaze one last time, sharp and calculating. Outside, the wind picked up, pulling the rustle of leaves into the cabin like a whisper of looming danger. Blaze remained still, eyes bright, nose aimed toward the doorway, ready to react if Kane stepped back inside. Tom breathed deeply, his hand resting on Blaze's back. He knew the threat was no empty gesture. Everything Oliver had recorded in his journal, every symbol on the map, and the instincts drilled into him as a soldier, all warned that they were facing an intelligent and dangerous adversary. Blaze gave Tom's hand a gentle lick, a quiet promise. We're ready. Tom returned to the table, carefully arranging the map, the journal, and the Key Ridge cipher. Blaze stood beside him, nosing each item, eyes tracking every corner of the cabin. The air was thick with tension, but layered with resolve. Tom understood they would need to go deeper into the cave, follow the trail Oliver had left, and rely on Blaze's keen senses to guard against dangers yet unseen. The feeling of being watched still lingered. Tom drew in a breath, sensing Blaze's presence beside him. Steady alert, feeding him courage and determination. Every step forward would be more than an exploration. It would be a confrontation with Maxwell Kane and Dominion Holdings, where every decision could tip the balance between success and survival. Blaze's tail flicked once before he hopped onto the chair beside the table, his eyes shining as if daring any threat to come closer. Tom's faint smile carried a warmth born from absolute loyalty. With Blaze at his side, he believed they could face anything, no matter the danger. Outside, the wind hissed through the cabin's gaps, but inside, the air had shifted, focused, deliberate. Tom sat running his hand over Blaze's head, his eyes set with determination. He studied the map, the journal, and the cipher, feeling the weight and worth of the legacy. Blaze tilted his head, as if to underline that every detail mattered, and that each step forward would reveal another piece of the puzzle. Even after Kane left, Blaze stayed poised, eyes sharp, ears catching every sound beyond the walls. Tom could feel the threat had not passed, and that preparation was key before they went deeper into Blackridge Cave, where the true secrets waited. The next stage would be dangerous, but Blaze would remain their guide, protector, and constant source of resolve. The afternoon in Blackridge was unusually still. Weak sunlight slipped through the heavy cloud cover, painting uneven shafts of gold over the damp earth, scattered with fallen pine needles. Inside the cabin, Tom sat at the wooden table, the 1864 Joel Key Ridge military map and Oliver's densely written notes spread before him. Blaze lay close to his chair, ears tall, his gaze flicking toward the door like a silent sentry. The morning's encounter with Maxwell Kane still lingered sharp in Tom's mind. The vague but cutting threat was like an invisible mark carved into the stillness, weighing on each beat of his heart. He knew he couldn't face a man like Kane alone. One name came instantly to mind: Carlos Vega, a former Navy Special Operations teammate, explosives expert, and a man Tom trusted without question. Tom pulled a satellite phone from his pack, checked the signal, and dialed a familiar number. Each ring carried him back to the tense but loyal days of the field, where he and Carlos had pushed through missions most would call impossible. "Tom, how long's it been? I thought you'd dropped off the map." Carlos's voice came warm with surprise. Tom exhaled, glancing at Blaze, who had lifted his head to listen. "We need to talk, Carlos. I'm in trouble. And it might be something worse than any battlefield." There was a pause, then Carlos replied without hesitation. "Send me the coordinates. I'll come." He didn't ask for details. Just the sound of Tom's voice was enough to gauge the stakes. 2 days later, Carlos's old pickup rumbled up the narrow track to the cabin. Blaze heard it long before it came into view. He rose, moved to the door tail, swaying in slow, measured arcs, while his eyes stayed sharp. When Carlos stepped out wearing a worn leather jacket and carrying a military pack, Blaze bounded forward, sniffing quickly before wagging his tail in recognition. Carlos crouched, giving Blaze's head a firm stroke and a grin. "You've still got the best partner in the world, Tom." Inside, Tom spread all the materials across the table: the map, the journal, the Key Ridge cipher page. The oil lamp's glow caught the intricate lines of the old map. Carlos pulled up a chair, dug into his pack for a small notebook and a magnifying glass, and began studying each detail. Joel K. Ridge. "I've read about him," Carlos said, tapping a symbol on the map. "These hydraulic trap systems are brilliant. If they're intact, jars are intact, they'll still function. And trust me, they'll make short work of anyone careless enough to trigger them." Tom nodded, sliding Oliver's journal across. The pages were yellowed, the ink faded in spots, but the handwriting was still clear. Carlos read slowly, jotting down key terms, then compared them to the map's markings. Blaze lay at their feet, his eyes shifting between Carlos's hands and the paper sniffing occasionally, as if adding his own review. "These coordinates." Carlos pressed a finger to the corner of the map. "They could mark an alternate entrance. Nobody smart hides something like this along a direct, obvious path." Key Ridge was a military officer. He'd have built-in misdirection every time. Tom stayed silent for a few seconds before speaking. "Kane was here. He wants to buy the land. I refused, and he left a message. No one refuses him without paying the price." Carlos looked up, his expression turning serious. "Then we need to be faster than him. We'll check every part of the area, make sure every secondary access point is identified. And Blaze will be our best eyes and ears." He bent down to stroke Blaze's head, and the dog's tail gave a faint wag as if accepting the mission. The rest of the afternoon was spent working without pause. Carlos explained how to read old military markings, breaking down the connection between Oliver's journal and the Key Ridge map. Tom jotted every detail into his personal notebook, while Blaze occasionally patrolled the tent perimeter, then returned to sit by Tom's side, eyes bright as though ensuring nothing and no one could approach without them knowing. Before the sun dipped behind the ridge, Carlos stacked the papers neatly. "We need gear, high-powered flashlights, climbing ropes, an engineer's toolkit, and a few other things. But above all, we need a plan. If Kane suspects we're getting closer, he'll make his move." Tom glanced at Blaze, who lay resting, yet kept his ears upright, always ready to respond. A faint smile crossed his face. "We've got an advantage. Blaze catches every strange sound. Kane can't surprise us with him here." Carlos nodded, shrugged on his jacket, and stood. "Good." Tomorrow morning, we start surveying the area around the cave. I want to see for myself those footprints and shell casings you told me about. Outside, the sky deepened to violet, streaked with drifting pink clouds over the mountain peaks. Blaze stepped onto the porch, eyes fixed on the distant tree-line breath, steady forming pale clouds in the cold air. Tom and Carlos joined him, all three standing in silence, each lost in their own thoughts, yet united in knowing the race had truly begun. In the fading light, Blaze's ears suddenly shot up, gaze locking onto a shadowed spot in the forest. A faint sound, too soft for Tom and Carlos to catch, traveled on the breeze, but it was enough for Blaze. He turned toward Tom, eyes holding a silent warning. Tom understood instantly the night ahead would not be entirely quiet, and the next chapter would take them deeper into Blackridge's secrets. Dawn crept slowly over Blackridge, golden light filtering through a veil of mist, clinging to wet leaves like scattered jewels. Inside the cabin, the night's chill lingered, mingling with the scent of old wood and damp ashes from the hearth. Tom sat at the table carefully reviewing the notes he and Carlos had discussed the day before while Blaze rested near the fire. Eyes half closed, seemingly relaxed, yet attuned to the faintest sound. Carlos was prepping the morning's gear for the cave survey when Blaze suddenly sprang up. His ears stood rigid, eyes shifting toward the fireplace, nose working rapidly. Tom recognized that posture. It was the same look Blaze had when he found the first tin box. "What is it, Blaze?" Tom rose and approached. Blaze moved forward in deliberate, steady steps, stopping at the far left corner of the hearth where the blackened bricks were worn smooth with age. He scraped a paw lightly against the floor, producing a faint metallic tap. Carlos set the gear aside and came over. "Looks like your friends found something again." The two men crouched down, using a small crowbar to pry at one of the bricks. A sharp crack sounded, revealing a small, dark cavity beneath. Blaze inhaled deeply, tail twitching lightly, eyes fixed on the hollow as if confirming its importance. Tom reached in and pulled out an old, smaller tin box, heavier than the first. Its metal was coated in dust and rust, but still intact. On the lid, a faintly engraved 5-pointed star encircled the letter K, the etching worn yet unmistakable. When Tom lifted the lid, the smell of aged paper and iron drifted out. Inside were 3 objects, a thick envelope sealed with red wax chipped at one corner, a carefully rolled map, and an ornate antique key with intricate wave-like patterns. Blaze sat close, nose brushing the box's edge, before looking up at Tom as if awaiting the meaning behind the find. Tom opened the letter first. The familiar slanting handwriting, now faded to brown, spilled across the page. It began a Joel Keeridge, leave these words as both a confession and a warning. The lines that followed revealed truths neither Tom nor Carlos had ever suspected. Joel wrote that the treasure was not merely gold or jewels, but also contained Civil War-era classified documents, evidence of secret dealings that could alter history. He admitted to creating a network of traps not only to deter thieves, but to ensure that anyone seeking the treasure would need to prove themselves worthy of its purpose. Joel also confessed that part of his reason for hiding it was to conceal a personal sin, betraying certain comrades to protect innocent townsfolk from retaliation. "If anyone finds what I have left," Joel wrote, "know that this treasure is a test, and only one who seeks to protect, not to possess, will make it to the end." Carlos spread the map across the table. It was a detailed schematic of the cave's trap system and tunnels, far more comprehensive than anything they'd seen before. Every passage was marked with notes on each trap, hydraulic systems, rolling boulders, even false tunnels designed to mislead intruders. Carlos tilted his head, eyes alight. "If this map is accurate, it'll save us days of trial and keep us out of most of the danger." Tom picked up the key. It was heavy, cold to the touch, its wave motifs matching symbols they'd seen in Oliver's journal. Carlos studied it closely. Could be for a mechanism inside the cave. Those wave patterns? I'm guessing a hydraulic trigger. Blaze remained still, eyes bright with pride, as if aware of his role in the discovery. Tom reached down to scratch behind his ears. Good work, Blaze. Without you, we might never have found this box. Blaze's tail gave a small wag, his alert posture unchanged, understanding that the real mission lay ahead. They spent the rest of the morning copying the map and storing the letter and key in a moisture-proof container. Carlos proposed using the copy inside the cave, keeping the original safe in case of loss or damage. Tom agreed, though a quiet weight pressed on him. Because if they had found such a vital clue, Kane and Dominion Holdings surely wouldn't be far behind. In the late afternoon, when golden sunlight slanted through the small window of the cabin, Tom sat studying the map once more. Blaze lay at his feet, eyes half closed but ears twitching at every sound from the forest outside. Across from him, Carlos sketched the routes onto a fresh sheet of paper, his hands working quickly yet with meticulous care. A sudden gust rattled the cabin door. Blaze's eyes snapped open, his body springing up, nose pointed toward the entrance, the fur along his spine rising. Tom and Carlos exchanged a glance before both turned to peer outside. Nothing moved in the clearing, but Tom knew. Blaze's instincts had never failed him. Tom's hand rested gently on the dog's back, feeling the tension in each muscle. Finding the second tin box had only brought them to the very edge of the truth, and from here, every step forward would be more dangerous. Somewhere in those dark woods, someone else might already know how close they were to the final piece, and would stop at nothing to take it. Night at Blackridge was thick with stillness, broken only by the faint whistle of wind through old wooden seams and the scattered chirping of insects beyond the trees. The oil lamp on the table cast a warm, amber glow, stretching Tom and Carlos's shadows, long and overlapping against the cabin wall. Blaze lay under the table, head resting on his front paws, eyes half open yet alert, the glint within them never fading. Before them sat the stack of documents Tom had retrieved from the hidden compartment of the second tin box. Oliver's final notes. The paper edges were frayed, the surface yellowed, but the handwriting remained strong and deliberate. Tom opened the first page and inhaled deeply, as if bracing himself for a truth too heavy to bear. Oliver had written that Dominion Holdings was no ordinary company. It was a facade concealing a network of corruption reaching back to the Civil War. Born from officers and merchants who had enriched themselves in secret during the fighting, the network bribed both military and civilian officials to control supplies and transport. When the war ended, it did not dissolve but adapted, emerging as shipping companies, banks, and resource conglomerates. Dominion was simply the modern mask of a power that had endured for over a century. Oliver's notes revealed that Joel Keyridge, once part of this network, had turned against them upon realizing their true goal: power and profit at any cost. That was why he had hidden the treasure and sensitive documents deep within Blackridge Cave, to keep them out of greedy hands. Tom's gaze hardened when he turned the page and saw the name Maxwell Kane. Oliver claimed Kane was not only the current head of Dominion, but also the man behind his death. A week before Oliver passed, Kane's men had come to Blackridge trying to force him to reveal the treasure's location. Oliver refused, and the incident was staged to look like a sudden heart attack. The final page made Tom's knuckles whiten. Oliver wrote that Kane had once interfered in Clara's medical treatment. Years earlier, Dominion controlled a chain of private hospitals and pharmaceutical distribution. When Tom searched for a new treatment that could save Clara, the only promising experimental drug was suddenly withdrawn from the list for business reasons. Oliver believed it was a calculated move to pressure Tom into selling his land and the Blackridge inheritance, something Kane had always coveted. Carlos read silently beside him, his face darkening. Now we know why he wants this land so badly, and why he's willing to do anything. Tom stayed still, eyes fixed on the page, though his mind was elsewhere. Clara's gentle smile and bright eyes rose vividly before him. The ache of loss mixed with a new surge of resolve, not just to protect his family's legacy, but to reclaim justice for Clara and Oliver. Blaze Rose padded closer and placed his muzzle on Tom's hand. That warm touch was a reminder he was not alone. Carlos tapped the map lightly. If we find the treasure and make these documents public, the entire Dominion network will be exposed. But remember, Kane knows this. He won't wait for us to move first. Tom nodded slowly, determination tightening in his chest. His hand slid along Blaze's back, feeling the strength in the dog's frame. Then we'll have to be faster. We get into that cave before he finds another way. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying a long, low whistle through the trees. Blaze turned toward the window, ears pricked, eyes piercing the darkness. Tom and Carlos fell silent, watching with him. Beyond the glass lay only night and fog, but Tom trusted Blaze's instincts. Dominion's footsteps might already be closer than they thought. Tom folded Oliver's notes, tucking them into his inner jacket pocket. Then he rose, meeting Carlos's eyes. Tomorrow we go into the main cavern. All the answers, and our chance to end Dominion, are waiting there. Blaze stood at his side, eyes bright, ready for whatever came next. In the night outside, secrets buried for centuries waited to be unearthed. But dawn had barely touched the ridges when a deep, resonant sound rolled through Blackridge like the heartbeat of a giant hidden within the mountain. Tom woke instantly as a faint vibration rose from the floorboards. Blaze was already at the door, standing rigid, ears his tracking every subtle shift in the air. Tom stepped outside into a blanket of silver fog. The distant roar cut through the haze, steady, mechanical, relentless. Carlos stood at the edge of the trees, wrapped in his coat, his gaze sharp. Sounds like heavy-duty drilling. They've started. From their vantage point on the hillside, Tom raised his binoculars. Through the mist, the hulking silhouette of Dominion's machinery came into view. A massive drill turned with deliberate force, its steel auger grinding into the cliffside, sending chunks of rock cascading like rain. Harsh industrial lights flooded the entrance, the beams scattering into blinding halos in the fog. Blaze let out a low growl, the ridge of his back bristling. Tom's hand rested at his neck, voice low. I know. You feel it too. This drill wasn't just a threat to the treasure. It could compromise the entire cave structure. One wrong bore, and the pressure and water traps inside could collapse the cavern, burying everything, past and future alike. Carlos's expression was grim. If the treasure's lost, so is every piece of evidence against Dominion. And at this pace, we don't have much time. He met Tom's eyes with a hard resolve. We move now. Tom nodded, his mind already racing. Joel's map showed a secondary entrance, smaller but safer, curling around the northern slope of the mountain. If they moved quickly, they could slip inside before Dominion's drills broke through to the main chambers. More importantly, this route was laced with traps that could only be disarmed with the ancient key they carried. They returned to the cabin and began their preparations. Carlos checked the ropes, flashlights, trap disarming kit, and a few small blasting caps to break through blockages if necessary. Tom carefully tucked the original map and Oliver's notes into a waterproof pouch, then examined Blaze's harness, fastening a small camera to the dog's collar for remote tracking. Blaze stood perfectly still as Tom tightened the straps, amber eyes fixed forward as if fully understanding the mission ahead. By the time they set off, the fog had begun to thin, revealing slick boulders and tangled roots along the mountain path. The drilling grew louder with each step, now accompanied by the metallic clang of tools and the shouts of Dominion workers. Tom knew a direct approach was suicide. The northern entrance was a narrow crack in the rock, half hidden by brush and moss. Blaze was the first to slip inside, moving gracefully past jagged stones. The beam of their flashlight skimmed over damp rock walls, catching thin rivulets of water that shimmered as they trickled downward. Exactly like the hydraulic traps Joel had described in his journal. Carlos pointed to a narrow groove running along the stone. "This is the water channel for the trap. If Dominion drills into it, the pressure will collapse the whole structure." Tom tilted his head, watching Blaze sniff at a stone slab whose color was subtly different from the rest. Remembering the ancient key, he slid it into a thin slot beside the slab. A faint click echoed, and the stone pivoted, revealing a safer tunnel beyond. They moved deeper into the mountain, each footstep ringing against the stone, blending with the distant rumble of the drills. The air grew colder, thick with the mingled scent of earth, wet stone, and rust. Blaze led the way, pausing at intervals, ears pricked, only continuing when the path ahead felt safe. Reaching a wider chamber, the drilling sounded closer than ever. Carlos met Tom's gaze. "If we don't reach the main chamber first, there'll be nothing left to save." Tom tightened his grip on the flashlight, its beam catching the sharp resolve in his eyes. "Then we run." Blaze surged ahead, guiding them through narrow bends and slick stone steps. The drills seemed to chase them, each metallic thud pressing closer. In Tom's mind, images of Clara of Oliver and Joel's confession burned bright, fueling his urgency. As they reached the last incline to the main chamber, a deep crack rang out from somewhere behind, followed by a violent tremor that sent shards of stone cascading from the ceiling. Blaze turned, amber eyes flashing with warning. The race against Dominion had reached its final stretch. One misstep, and everything would be swallowed by the darkness of the mountain. The tunnel narrowed, pulling Tom, Carlos, and Blaze further into Blackridge's heart. The roar of the drills faded behind them, replaced by another sound, a steady, echoing rush of water. Cold, damp air clung to their lungs, with each breath the atmosphere heavy and close. The flashlight swept over mineral-speckled walls, glinting faintly in silver. Blaze padded ahead, every movement, deliberate nose working constantly. Tom watched his partner closely, trusting the dog's instincts as their truest safeguard. The passage opened into a cavern, with a fast-churning stream cutting through its center. Joel's map marked this place, but gave no warning of danger. Carlos crouched, shining his light across the water. Deeper than I expected, and the current strong. Tom stepped forward to test the edge, only for Blaze to block his way, body rigid, head lowered, releasing a low growl before backing up. The dog's amber gaze locked on the water, right at Tom's feet. Alert now, Tom crouched to study it more closely. Under Carlos's beam, the truth emerged. The stones beneath the surface formed an unnatural arc. At its center, the water spiraled into a black, hungry vortex. "Pressure trap," Carlos muttered. He pointed to a fissure hidden behind moss. "This channels water from reservoirs above. Step on that arc, and the pressure dumps all at once, pulling you straight into the sink." If Blaze hadn't stopped him, one more step would have dragged Tom under. He knelt, resting his hand on the dog's neck. "Good work, partner," he murmured, feeling Blaze's steady breathing and unshakable focus. Words weren't needed. The trust between them was absolute. Carlos secured a rope to a solid outcrop and threw the other end across. Tom lifted Blaze onto a dry boulder before swinging himself over. The rope burned against his palms, but his eyes never left the dog. When Tom landed safely, he called softly, and Blaze launched forward, muscles coiled, body arcing cleanly through the air, landing beside him with perfect precision. In that instant, Tom knew their bond had deepened. They were no longer just man and dog, but true teammates, each relying on the other's instincts without hesitation. They pressed on, moving with greater caution now. Joel's map was good, but it was clear there were traps he hadn't recorded, either added after his time or deliberately kept secret. At a tight bend, Tom paused to glance back, the last glow of the secondary entrance gone from sight. Ahead, the darkness thickened, the sound of water weaving through the steady drip of stone fragments from the ceiling. Blaze brushed his leg with a gentle nudge, urging him forward. Tom's beam caught a vast stone arch ahead, faintly etched with worn carvings, proof they were nearing the mountain's hidden heart. But before they could take another step, a strange sound echoed from deep within freezing Blaze mid-stride. The dog's amber eyes locked on the shadows ahead, seeing something they could not. The beam of Tom's flashlight swept over deep carvings, etched into the stone arch above, revealing ancient patterns worn soft by time. He reached out fingertips, brushing the icy grooves, feeling each uneven ridge. This was the final marker mentioned in Joel Keyridge's map, the one leading to the heart of the secret. A few steps away, Blaze kept his nose close to the stone floor before lifting his head to look at Tom, amber eyes glowing with urgency. Tom gave a slight nod, signaling forward. They moved through the narrow corridor, its rock walls coated in shimmering minerals that caught the light like a galaxy trapped inside the mountain for centuries. At the end of the passage stood a massive iron door, its surface scarred with rust and years. Heavy hinges, each as thick as a man's wrist, anchored it into the rock. At its center was a round keyhole encircled by an engraving of rippling waves, the same emblem that had appeared in Oliver's notes and Joel's diagram. Tom retrieved an old brass key from his pocket, its tarnished surface glinting under the beam. He slid it into the lock, turning it with such smooth precision that the motion was almost silent. Then came a single heavy click, the sound echoing deep into the dark. The door shivered before slowly parting, releasing a drawn-out metallic groan like something waking from centuries of sleep. A rush of cold air spilled out, laced with the damp scent of earth mixed with another faint aroma, aged wood parchment and something ancient beyond measure. Inside lay a vast chamber with smooth stone walls and a high ceiling. At the center, resting on a stone pedestal, was a large wooden chest trimmed with brass, its carvings intricate, its lid secured by 2 iron bars. Around it, shelves sagged under smaller chests, sealed boxes of scrolls and iron crates stamped with old wax seals. Carlos stepped forward slowly, his hand trembling as it touched the main chest. Together they unlatched the bars and lifted the lid. Gold spilled into view, heavy ingots, stacked neatly antique coins catching the light, and fine jewelry that had once belonged to the ruling elite of the 19th century. Tom's gaze shifted to a shadowed corner where a low military-marked crate sat. He knelt, opened it, and felt his breath slow. Inside were stacks of documents, maps, and letters, every one detailing a vast web of corruption. Smuggling and covert dealings that tied powerful figures from the Civil War era all the way to the present. Some names Tom recognized from past military investigations, along with contracts bearing signatures he knew, several directly linked to Dominion holdings. In one folder, his eyes froze at the sight of Clara's name, his late wife. Listed among patients Dominion had indirectly denied aid to forcing families to sell their land. Blaze padded closer, placing his front paws on the stone pedestal, head tilted as if sensing the weight of what they had uncovered. Tom's hand slid over the shepherd's warm back, grounding himself in the shared moment that felt both triumphant and heavy. Carlos's voice broke the silence, deep and steady. "We're holding the key to ending Dominion. But if Kane finds out..." He didn't finish, but Tom understood. They were now the biggest targets in the game. Tom straightened his eyes, sharpening. "We're not leaving empty-handed. But we need a way to get this out safely." His gaze swept the room, already mapping potential hiding spots for part of the treasure in case Dominion stormed in. As he and Carlos whispered through plans, Blaze suddenly turned toward the passage they had come from. Ears, rigid muscles coiling. From the darkness came the metallic echo of steady, deliberate footsteps. The sound grew clearer, heavy boots striking stone with the faint clink of gear. Tom held his breath and signaled Carlos to kill the flashlight. The room dropped into pitch black, the air thick with the sound of their quiet breathing and pounding hearts. Blaze pressed to Tom's leg, a living wire of tension. Amber eyes flickering faintly in the dark. From a narrow side tunnel, sharp white beams began sweeping across the stone. Then a low, commanding voice rolled through the chamber, reverberating in the hollow mountain. "I know you're in there, Ward." Kane emerged from the shadows, his polished black suit a jarring contrast to the cave's rough austerity. 4 large men followed, clad in body armor and gloves, rifles lowered, but their eyes cutting sharp with menace. He stopped a few paces away, his men's flashlights casting cold edges across his face. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Ward Kane's gaze slid over the gold and the files. "Just hand it all over, and you and your dog walk out of here alive." Tom didn't answer. He stepped forward subtly, shielding Blaze, his stare locked on Kane. Carlos shifted sideways, positioning himself to guard both Tom and the exit. Kane's lips' curved voice softening, though it carried a razor edge. "You think you can take on Dominion? This empire has stood for centuries. Those papers are the only thing that could bring it down, and I'm not letting that happen." Blaze gave a low, throaty growl, inching forward, gaze locked on Kane. That protective energy flowed into Tom, anchoring his resolve. "I don't care about your empire." Tom's voice rang through the stone chamber. "But I won't let this fall into your hands." Kane's eyes hardened. With a flick of his wrist, 2 of his men advanced their rifles, shifting with the sharp clack of bolts chambering rounds. The air seemed to thicken. Carlos leaned in just enough to murmur to Tom, "We need time." Tom gave a slight nod. He stepped back half a pace, signaling Blaze toward a dark rock alcove unnoticed by Kane. The shepherd melted into the shadows, his golden amber coat blending with the stone, leaving only the glint of his eyes. Kane moved closer, voice sharpened to a blade. "Last chance, Ward. Hand it over, or I take it from your corpse." Blaze now crouched behind one of the gunman, muscles coiled tight. Tom clenched his fists, eyes never leaving Kane. The mountain seemed to hold its breath, a single drop of water echoing before the standoff shattered. The tension was a living thing, stretched taut and ready to snap. Kane stood calm, certain of his advantage. Behind him, his men slowly spread out, 2 flanking to trap Tom and Carlos against the stone. Carlos's eyes flickered toward the stone wall on his left, the same one where he had spotted narrow crevices and strange markings that matched the military map once belonging to Joel Kyridge. In Oliver's handwritten notes, there was a single line, "Emergency escape," only triggered when the price is worth paying. Carlos knew he was running out of time. His hand went to the pouch at his side, feeling the small steel cable mechanism and the prepared brass pin. In one swift motion, he yanked the pin free and jammed it hard into the crevice. A dry, sharp click echoed through the rock, and then from deep within the mountain, a low rumble began to rise, growing louder with every heartbeat. Kane immediately spun around, a flicker of unease in his eyes. "What is he doing?" one of the henchmen barked. No one had the chance to answer. A sudden gust roared down the passageway, carrying damp air and the earthy scent of mud. Droplets began to patter from the ceiling, gathering into a steady flow. Blaze reacted faster than anyone, surging forward to stand in front of Tom Amber, eyes locked toward the side passage. Seconds later, water burst through like a freed wild beast, sweeping rocks and mud in its violent surge. The flood slammed into 2 of Kane's men from behind, knocking them off their feet and dragging them screaming into the darkness. Their voices were swallowed by the thunder of water. The 2 remaining men fought to hold on, but the water rose fast, the current too strong. One slipped, disappearing into the swirling torrent. The last clung desperately to a jagged outcrop, dropping his weapon to keep his grip. In the chaos, Carlos shoved a boulder into place, forcing the water to split, separating Tom and Carlos from the last struggling man. When the rush subsided, spray hanging in the air, only Kane remained. His tailored suit soaked, but his eyes still cold and unreadable. Now there were just a few paces between him and Tom, with nothing in between. Kane stepped forward, water dripping from his cuffs. His hand closing around the pistol pulled from inside his jacket. Blaze gave a low, tense growl, every muscle coiled. Tom felt the heat of the dog's breath by his leg. One thought flashing through his mind. This would be the moment everything turned. "You've chosen the hardest way," Ward Kane said, his voice deep as falling stone. "But you won't be walking out of here with that." Tom lowered his stance, eyes locked on Kane. Carlos shifted to the side, keeping the line of sight clear. In the damp darkness, the mountain's chill mixed with the heat of breath and the metallic tang in the air. Tom's senses sharpened until he could hear every drop falling behind him. Kane tightened his finger on the trigger, but Blaze moved first. In a lightning leap, the German Shepherd struck, forcing Kane back. The shot rang out, the bullet grazing Tom's shoulder before burying itself in the rock wall. Tom lunged in, knocking Kane's arm aside, sending the pistol skidding across the stone. Kane countered with a hard blow to Tom's ribs, but Tom absorbed it, locking onto him. Carlos charged in, kicking the weapon far out of reach. Kane slipped on the wet floor, but fought like a cornered predator. Blaze darted around, cutting off his escape. Then, another sound rose from deep within the mountain, louder, harsher. Dominion's drilling rigs now running at full power. All four froze for a fraction of a second, realizing this fight was far from over. Kane's hand went for his hip, another flash of metal. Tom caught the glint, heart pounding in a drumbeat of instinct. Blaze saw it too, his amber coat, bristled ears tilting forward like arrows before a launch. In an instant, he sprang. Claws scraped stone muscles, surging his body, a living spear closing the space. The impact drove Kane to the ground, the gun firing into the cavern's ceiling, stone fragments raining down. The weapon spun across the slick floor, stopping near Carlos's boots. He kicked it into a deep crack in the wall. Kane writhed, but Blaze's bite held firm on his sleeve, his forepaws pinning the man down, eyes fierce as if saying, "You won't harm him." Tom dropped beside them, locking Kane's free wrist. Only the sound of harsh breathing boots slipping on wet rock and the distant pounding drill filled the air. "Carlos," Tom barked. Carlos ripped a length of climbing rope from his pack, binding Kane's wrists behind him. Once certain he was secure, Tom signaled Blaze to release. The dog backed off, but stayed between Tom and Kane, chest heaving, ready to strike again. Sodden and bound, Kane lifted his head, that thin smile still on his lips. "You think you've won," his voice was hoarse. "You've only seen the beginning of what we've planned." Blaze growled low. Tom's grip tightened on the pack holding the chest of documents and maps. He knew Kane's words weren't just bluster. From the depths came another metallic scream, like a massive door tearing open. A cold wind rushed out, carrying the damp scent of mud. And something else, like the breath of a vast, unseen space. Tom and Blaze exchanged a glance. Both understood. The hardest part was still ahead. That cold wind still whispered through the passage. But now another sound joined it. The synchronized heavy rhythm of approaching boots. Tactical flashlights swept the cavern walls, glinting off rivulets running down the stone. From the cave's main entrance, a line of figures in black tactical vests emerged all at once. The bold gold letters FBI stood out against their backs. In an instant, the space seemed to fill with authority and command. "Drop your weapon!" A deep, clear male voice rang out. Carlos immediately raised his hand in signal, pointing toward Kane, who was bound tightly. Two agents moved in their motions, so practiced it was as if they had drilled for this exact moment 1,000 times. One swiftly cuffed Kane, the other holding him firmly in place, even as he tried to twist his head, searching for a view of the situation. Tom stood slightly back, keeping Blaze close. The German shepherd's amber eyes stayed locked on Kane, each steady breath, carrying the readiness to act should the man make a wrong move. From among the FBI group, a middle-aged man in a black suit stepped forward, his salt-and-pepper hair and sharp gaze adding weight to his presence. He approached Tom, speaking slowly. "I'm Special Agent Harris. You're Tom Ward?" "That's right," Tom replied, his tone still guarded. "How did you know to find us here?" Harris swept his gaze around the cavern, then lifted his flashlight toward the ceiling, letting its beams skim over ancient markings and fresh drill scars. "We knew. Because of Oliver Ward?" The name made Tom pause. Harris continued, his voice lower. "Before he passed, Oliver sent us a sealed dossier. He wrote that if anything happened to him, it would almost certainly be tied to an organization called Dominion Holdings and a man named Maxwell Kane." Tom's grip tightened on his backpack strap, the weight of the moment settling heavy on him. Memories came back. Nights when Oliver sat by the wooden table under the glow of a yellow lamp, his hands trembling but his eyes unwavering. "He even foresaw this would happen?" Tom asked. Harris gave a slight nod. In the file, Oliver included a map of the area, copies of some journal pages, and a list of people he trusted. Your name and Carlos Vega's were on that list. "We've been tracking Kane for months, but this is the first time we've had the evidence and cause to bring him in." Carlos smirked faintly. So the old man really had a backup plan after all. Blaze lifted his head as if sensing the shift in the air. His amber gaze turned toward Tom Tail, giving a single slow wag, as if to say every effort had been worth it. Harris signaled for 2 agents to escort Kane out. Kane turned back, lips curling into a thin smile, though his eyes burned with resentment. "This isn't over, Ward." Tom said nothing, only watched until Kane disappeared around the bend. Footsteps and clipped radio chatter echoed in the distance, blending with the silence left by the halted drills, as if the FBI's arrival had brought Dominion's ambitions in the mountain to a halt. Another agent approached, handing Harris a sealed evidence pouch. Inside were several old photographs and a short handwritten note. Harris skimmed the contents, then passed them to Tom. The handwriting was unmistakably Oliver's. "If you're reading this, it means the contingency plan worked. Remember, truth is worth more than gold. And Blaze, keep him close, for he will save you more times than you can imagine." Tom held the letter tightly, as if it still carried Oliver's warmth. He looked down at Blaze, and in the quiet that passed between them, understanding flowed without a word. "We'll need your statement," Harris said at last. "But first, let's get out of here. There are things in this mountain best left undisturbed." As they stepped toward the cave's mouth, daylight poured in, igniting Blaze's golden amber coat into a warm flame against the winter air. But deep within the mountain, a faint rumble sounded, stone shifting, hinting that not all secrets had gone to rest. 6 months had passed since the drills in the mountain's heart had been silenced, and Maxwell Kane had been led away under FBI custody. The bitter winter had given way to summer warmth, yet Blackridge still stood as imposing and quiet as ever. The path to the summit was now paved with flat stone slabs, flanked by rows of lavender and thyme releasing a soft fragrance. A new wooden sign stood proudly at the entrance, Key Ridge Ward Historical Preserve, the letters carved deep into oak and framed in polished brass. Below it, a smaller inscription read, "In memory of Oliver Ward and all who guarded the truth." Tom stood before the sign, his hand brushing over each carved line, as if to feel the lingering presence of the past. Beside him, Blaze sat tall, amber eyes surveying the endless ridges that rolled away, like waves on a silent sea. Carlos emerged from the newly built lodge near the preserve, holding a metal plaque that read, "Director of Security." He grinned broadly, his smile warm as morning light. Who would have thought a demolition guy like me would end up head of security for a historic site? Tom's smile carried a quiet trust. If not you, then who else? Carlos glanced toward the trail to town, where the day's first visitors were arriving, some with cameras, some with children in tow. Under the golden sun, fresh leaves shimmered, reflecting the sky's soft turquoise. In Tom's jacket pocket was a card that read, Founder, Clara Ward Fund. Since the FBI had awarded him a substantial bounty for aiding in the Dominion case, he'd known exactly where it should go. The fund now supported families of struggling veterans, those who had sacrificed quietly, yet were often forgotten. At the opening ceremony, Tom had told the crowd, Clara believed that a single act of kindness, no matter how small, could change a life. I want this fund to be proof of that belief. Blaze had been there that day, sitting by the podium, with a badge reading Silent Guardian, gleaming in the sunlight, eyes seeming to understand every word. Now, with the preserve in full operation, Tom spent much of his time here with Carlos. He led small groups to the preserved cabin to the cave mouth, where Blaze had once discovered the faint breath of hidden air, and to the gallery displaying replicas of the original 1864 military map. Blaze had become the preserve's special guide. Children ran after him in delight, while adults paused to admire and take photos with the German shepherd whose golden amber coat glistened like polished sunlight. Sometimes all it took was for Blaze to lie quietly on the lodge porch, eyes lit softly in the afternoon glow, to bring smiles to every passerby. With his military background, Carlos ensured absolute security for the grounds. He installed a network of sophisticated cameras, yet preserved the natural beauty and historical authenticity of the place. During his patrols, he often paused to talk with Tom, sharing new plans, opening a winter tour route, creating historical education programs for school children. One morning, with a thin veil of mist still hanging along the mountain slopes, Tom stepped with Blaze to the cliff's edge and gazed down into the valley. Below Cedar Hollow lay like a living painting, red-roofed timber houses, winding roads, and beyond them, a silver-lit river. Tom drew in a deep breath, letting the crisp mountain air fill his lungs. The past 6 months had been something he never imagined he could have, a stretch of peace after so many storms. Yet somewhere deep in his mind, he knew that his story with Blaze was far from over. Carlos approached from behind, handing Tom an envelope. Letter for you. No sender's name. Tom tore it open. Inside was a blurred photograph, seemingly taken from a distance. It showed an old warehouse, and in the far right corner, a shadowed figure in a black coat, face obscured. Below the image, one line scrawled in uneven handwriting. What happened in Blackridge was only the beginning. Blaze tilted his head, amber eyes locking with Tom's. No words were needed. Both sensed the same truth: a new chapter was forming on the horizon. The wind atop Blackridge grew stronger, carrying the resin scent of pine and the damp breath of earth. Tom gripped the photo tightly, eyes fixed on the place where the horizon met the dark green ridges, knowing that he and Blaze would need to be ready for whatever lay ahead. That afternoon, the summit was wrapped in the slow exhale of a long, busy day. Golden strips of light spilled across the slopes, weaving through the branches of pine and birch and falling onto the wooden deck of the small house. Tom sat in an old wooden chair Carlos had salvaged and restored from the reserve storage. Before him stretched a vast view, a stone path curving into the historic preserve fields of wildflowers in full bloom, and far below the quiet valley of Cedar Hollow rooftops peeking from beneath the trees. Beside him, Blaze lay, stretched out, head resting on his forepaws, amber eyes half closed as if savoring the sun's warmth. Occasionally his ears pricked at the sound of children's laughter or the distant steps of visitors at the entrance. From the porch, Tom saw a family stop at the large wooden sign carved with Key Ridge Ward Historic Preserve. A boy of about 10 pointed at a photograph displayed in the exhibit, the one taken on opening day with Tom, Carlos, and Blaze, and said something that made his whole family laugh. The sight drew a small smile to Tom's lips. His mind drifted back over the months gone by, the letter from the lawyer, the discovery of the old cabin, freezing nights in the Blackridge Range, the tense moments facing Kane deep in the mountain. He remembered the damp rock under his hands, footsteps echoing in the dark, and Blaze's sharp, steady gaze the moment danger drew near. Every detail remained as vivid as if it had happened yesterday. Tom knew that without Blaze, many moments might have ended differently. This dog was not just a companion. He was a silent compass, a lifeline anchoring Tom to what was good, even in the most exhausting hours. Carlos appeared along the path holding a steaming cup of coffee. Setting it on the small table beside Tom, he sank into the chair across from him. "More visitors than I expected today," he said, glancing toward the gate as another group arrived. Tom nodded. "Each person who comes here brings their own story, and maybe they'll carry this one back to tell someone else." Blaze lifted his head, amber eyes glinting in the late day light as if listening. Carlos chuckled. "What do you think Oliver would say if he saw all this today?" Tom looked toward the memorial plaque by the path leading to the cliff's edge. A breeze carried the faint scent of lavender. "I think he'd smile and say every sacrifice was worth it." They sat in quiet for a while, letting the wind carry the rustle of leaves. The western sky deepened into orange laced with hints of violet. Visitors began making their way down the mountain in small groups, voices fading into the distance until only Tom, Blaze, and Carlos remained on the porch. Carlos rose, waved a casual farewell, and headed back toward the security post. Tom watched him go, then turned to Blaze. He leaned down, resting his hand on the warm, golden amber coat, feeling the slow, steady rhythm of his friend's breathing. "We did it." My friend Tom whispered the words meant for Blaze, but also carried on the wind toward Oliver and Clara, wherever they might be. Blaze nudged his head into Tom's hand, eyes glowing with a quiet gentleness. In that moment, every trace of fatigue, every scar from the past seemed to dissolve. What remained was peace, a wholeness Tom had never thought he would find again. In the distance, the sun sank beyond the horizon, leaving a warm afterglow over Blackridge's peak. Tom sat still, listening to the wind in the forest, the steady heartbeat beside him, knowing that this was the truest legacy, the legacy of a loyal heart. The story of Tom and Blaze was not merely about unearthing secrets hidden deep in the Blackridge Mountains, but a testament to the power of trust, loyalty, and a friendship that crossed every boundary. At every step, Blaze, the golden amber German shepherd, had been a devoted partner, a silent guardian, and the link connecting Tom to life's better truths. The German shepherd breed has long been known for its intelligence, exceptional working ability, and deep bond with humans. Through this story, that image comes into sharper focus. Blaze not only helped Tom survive danger, but reignited in him a sense of hope and purpose. His presence transformed a battle against greed and injustice into a journey of rediscovering faith in humanity. The message of this story reaches far beyond the frame of an adventure. It is a reminder that love for animals, especially the German shepherd, can bring healing, build trust, and inspire us to live more kindly each day. When we value and bond with our four-legged friends, we receive not only protection and unwavering loyalty, but also a lesson in how to love and share in the fullest, truest way.